2009 Wharton India Economic Forum, titled India, The Road Ahead, took place in Philadelphia and brought together CEOs of leading Indian companies, investors, heads of non-profit organizations, sports celebrities, and Bollywood stars to discuss where India is headed in an age of economic uncertainty. Indian Knowledge at Wharton brings you one-on-one conversations with these leaders.
Thank you very much for joining us today. A lot of our women readers would be very interested to know how you've charted your career. I mean, you began, I think, in 1984 as a management trainee. You were named to the, I think, 25th on Fortune's list of most powerful women in business in 2008. You've been named the new CEO of ICICI, and I believe the transition's happening in, is it April or May?
1st of May.
1st of May. So, you know, going from a management trainee in 1984 in India to the head of one of the largest banks in India, what challenges did you face as you progressed through your career?
Well, I think it's been a very exciting and a challenging journey, no doubt about it. I think when you talk of a career span of 25 years, the way I look back, I feel that as I spent these 25 years, the organization also really transformed and grew substantially. We were a very small development financial institution 25 years ago. From there, we are today the second largest bank in the country and a very large financial services group, which meant that there were a lot of opportunities for people based on merit. And as I spent these 25 years, we as an organization went into commercial banking, into retail banking, into infrastructure financing, and into international banking. And somehow, I was able to really be a part of most of the new initiatives that were set up by the organization. So it's partly the fact that there was growth in the organization that gave me opportunity to prove myself. The other thing was that, of course, there is no substitute to hard work. So as opportunities came along, of course, you had to work hard, prove yourself, and learn from those opportunities and evolve as a person.
As a woman, especially starting your career, did you feel you had to work harder to prove yourself?
I think in a way a woman has to work harder. I don't know whether to prove herself or not, but one has to recognize the fact that a woman is literally living 48 hours out of 24 hours because you're just not managing your career, you are definitely managing your family as well. So in that sense, I think in any case you'll end up working much harder. But once you kind of decide to do that and once you make up your mind and once you believe that you can do it, I think you then land up doing it. And what's important is that as long as the opportunities come along your way on the basis of merit and without any biases of gender, then I think you can work along and make the best out of those opportunities.
Do you perceive that there are still some hurdles for women in business who would like to start out in business in India? And if so, what are they?
I would think that in the past 25 years, of course, things have changed tremendously. When I started working, I don't think one could even imagine at that point in time that women would lead very many large organizations. But I think today, even socially, there's a lot more acceptance that women actually would have their careers. It starts from the parents who themselves want their daughters to have their own careers. I think then again when people get married, the husbands or the in-laws again accept this very nicely that the woman in the house will have a career. So I think socially there is much more acceptance and again the biases in the minds of people in terms of there are only certain things that men can do and there are certain things that women can't do, I think in a way are becoming less. Would I say that it's become absolutely an even world in every organization? It may not have as yet. But I think things are changing substantially.
And does ICICI fund women entrepreneurs, or if they do, to what extent do they fund them?
See, ICICI has always been a gender-neutral organization. So why even talk of funding women or not, even the fact that there are so many women in the ICICI group and doing well.
I guess the appropriate way to phrase the question is to what extent do you have statistics on the number of women
Yeah,
that you're funding?
so the statistics,
Yes.
because we don't do anything special for women, but we are in a way special because we do not keep any gender biases in our mind.
Right.
So, when it's an entrepreneur, we go by the merit of the project. When it's an employee, we just go by the merit of the employee. We actually are blindsided to whether the person is a man or a woman.
Do you feel that's a factor in some other organizations, that there is sort of a gender bias when it comes to funding?
I would not want to believe so. I would not want to believe so. But, if you look at our own organization, if we are a 36,000 strong employee base, and of that 33% are women. So we have a large women employee base who are doing well in the organization.
You do fund a number of women ventures.
Yes.
Because you are, as you say, gender blind.
That's right.
Are there any particular success stories that you would note?
Yes, if you have heard of, Kiran Mazumdar, the biotech company in India, that was a company that started with our, private equity venture fund kind of association many years ago when it was just in the kind of a seed capital stage. So there are many of these celebrated cases in that sense which have become much bigger. On the other hand, there are many which may not have been known as yet, but many women entrepreneurs are doing very well in the gem and jewelry business. Many of them are doing very well in the tourism business. So we have a lot of the the initiatives that women are running, which have been funded by us.
And what advice would you give to an entrepreneur who was approaching the bank for funding?
I think, always I would, but especially in the current times, I would say that the first important thing is to start with a structure which is very robust, by which I mean that it should have a very good and a sensible mix of debt and equity, because it's always very tempting to start with a heavily debt-oriented structure because you have to put very less. But I think when you're starting a venture, you have to plan for certain uncertainties, and if you stretch yourself right from the beginning with a heavily debt-oriented structure, then you're not able to kind of manage the course if things kind of don't move in the same way as you had planned. But if you start with a little conservative debt equity structure, gives you the ability to kind of establish your base, and once you do that, then you can take on more kind of debt-oriented structures on top of that.
And what general advice would you give to women who want to start in a career like yours? What should they keep in mind?
The most important thing that they have to keep in mind is take out any inhibition in their own mind. Most of the time I think it's more an inhibition in the minds of women to say, oh, but I'm a woman, I have to run my family, so I will not be able to make a good job out of my career, or that, oh, if I follow a career, I'll have to ruin my family life. Well, I think that's only an inhibition to start with. As I said, once you believe that you're equally strong and you can do both, and you make up your mind to do both, well, it's a little hard work. It's not a cakewalk, but if you make up your mind, I think you can do it. So the first important thing is to start with self-confidence, and that is what gives you the basis to then keep moving forward.
And what's the biggest challenge from your perspective of doing both?
Well, the challenge is that, as I said, it means you are working much harder. It means you have to organize your time much better. It means you have to prioritize your time much better. It means you have to sometimes give up some things. If you are in the most important meeting in your office, you will have to give up a parents-teachers meeting that's taking place somewhere else, and sometimes the other way around. So I think you have to set clear priorities for yourself, and the priorities change every day because something is more important at a certain point in time. So I think it means all that, handling all that. But and also, I always believe that, in fact, women, if they want to grow on the basis of merit, they should never expect anything special. I think once you believe that you want to rise up in the organization, then you have to be willing to give as many hours of work as the job demands, as much of travel as the job demands, because then you cannot say, oh, but I'm a woman, I'll do only this. So I think you have to actually give in as much as the job demands and as much as it takes to do, to look after your family. But once you, as I said, you have to make up your mind and then try and do that.
Right, and well, clearly you work many hours a day. What do you do for fun when you find the time to enjoy yourself?
Well, whenever I find the time, my biggest fun is to spend time with my family. I don't think I really actually find fun if I have to put myself away and say I want time for myself. I think there is so very little time that I get with my kids that I really enjoy each and every moment of what I get with them.
Great. Well, thanks very much for talking with us today.
Thank you.